on eBay right now, you can get a Game Boy Color for like, what, $30, $35, $40 for a real good one if you're lucky. I don't know if you remember how pocketable a Game Boy Color is, but it's not really at all. And you can't see the screen unless you're under the presence of the sun. But also for $40, there's this thing, the BITTBOY. And if you're in the market for a Game Boy, it might just be the solution to all of your problems. I wasn't in the market for a Game Boy. I wasn't even in the market for a portable emulator, but here we are. Anything that will let me play Game Boy games and actually see what is happening on screen is an A+ for me. I'm a big fan of original hardware for a few reasons. One, I'm a collector, so I like building out a physical library. Two, it's wrong to emulate games you don't already own. That's illegal. That's called stealing. Do you want me to go to jail? Do you want me to start reviewing jail food? Three, software emulation isn't always perfect. Sometimes games run faster or slower if they're not emulated properly. Mega Man is a perfect example of this. The slowdown that happens when there's too many enemies on screen has become such an important part of the gameplay that you'll miss it if it's not there. But sometimes compromises have to be made. When you're emulating, since there's no cartridges, all of your games can be with you in one device. The BITTBOY also sports an IPS screen, which is too beautiful for this type of console. I know IPS as the type of screen graphic designers want when reproducing true colors. And here we are, playing ugly-ass Game Boy games on one. But these ugly-ass Game Boy Color sprites have never looked better. The screen is a weird aspect ratio, but you have the option to play in the traditional 10:9 aspect ratio just with black bars on the sides. There's also, of course, brightness options because this screen can be really bright if you're playing in a dark room. Changing the brightness and volume isn't exactly cut and dry, it's something you have to memorize. You hold select and press A and B to change the volume, and you hold select and press the turbo buttons for the brightness. Why there are turbo buttons on this thing, I have no idea. Probably could have done without those. I'm leaving out the best part here. Not only can it play original Game Boy games, not only can it play Game Boy Color games, but it could also play NES games. That's right, you can have an entire Game Boy Color and NES in this tiny little form factor. Not this giant f***ing monstrosity that they just revealed at CES this year. Can you believe that they're trying to sell this thing for $80? It's actually not too bad, but this thing is only half the price. It's only $40. And you can even plug it into a TV. Unfortunately, only through composite cables. Wouldn't it be wild if this thing had a mini HDMI port?
Looks like it has a little bit of trouble doing Super Famicom.
It's tiny in every way possible. It's also remarkably thin. The buttons are normal sized. They're just kind of pushed together. I like this layout for the B and A buttons better than a traditional Game Boy. It's easier to play games like Mario this way. Since the buttons are closer together and there's a lot less of a chin on this device, it can feel a little cramped during a long play session. But it's not a deal breaker. A lot of times, emulation consoles like this require a decent amount of setup, but not the BITTBOY. All you need is an SD card. Any old fat formatted micro SD card will do. Slap a bunch of ROMs on there right in the root folder, and that's it. That's all you need to do. The BITTBOY will then automatically sort the games into NES, Game Boy, and Game Boy Color lists. The UI is a bit ugly looking, but it could be much, much worse. Also, if you set your micro SD card up on a Mac, you might get these duplicate files that have a little dot underscore in front of them. Those are just trash. You can delete those. Don't ask me where you can get ROMs from. Websites are shutting down left and right. I just Google the name of the game I want and then the word ROM, click the top link, and carefully navigate around the website's various download buttons for the least suspicious looking one. It's not that hard. Remember, make sure you own the game or else you're a thief. When I first turned the BITTBOY on, I actually thought it was broken because without a micro SD card in there, it will just stay on the boot screen. The same thing happens if you use an incorrectly formatted micro SD card, which really threw me off at first. But other than that, this thing's the easiest thing in the world to set up. They're also apparently working on porting Linux over to it. So if you're interested in tinkering, that could potentially open this thing up to a whole bunch of other different consoles. I don't think this thing's powerful enough to do SNES or Game Boy Advance games, or else they would have included it, but it's a possibility. I wish that I had a solid read on the battery life. It came with about half a charge and I haven't needed to charge it at all. I played for about 2 to 3 hours. Right now I've been filming for about, what, 45 minutes, and it's been on this whole time. It's been on the verge of dying for the last 2 hours and that hasn't happened yet, so it's lasting a pretty long time. The OG Game Boys all have around 10 hours of battery life, so this thing's not gonna be able to compete with that. But those take AA batteries. Who's got AA batteries laying around anymore? I'm not quite sure why, but lately I've been into Game Boy games and Game Boy hardware. This BITTBOY, with its tiny form factor and its satisfying looking screen, actually makes me yearn to explore the Game Boy's vast library. My only gripe with this thing is that there's no way to plug in a Game Boy camera. It would be awesome to have that in such a tiny form factor. You all know how much I love taking pictures with that thing, but it's understandable why there's no physical cartridge slot in here. It would make things a lot bigger. They'd probably have to license it. Also, the Game Boy camera, the Game Boy camera is gigantic. It's like the size of it. Yeah, that'd be that'd be quite a lot to walk around with. The BITTBOY does have some competition though. Hyperkin is working on their Ultra Game Boy, which is their take on the Game Boy Light. The screen looks gorgeous, definitely way better than an actual Game Boy Light can do. Unfortunately, it only plays original Game Boy games, just like the Game Boy Light. Fortunately, you can use actual Game Boy cartridges, but I think it's software emulated, just like all of Hyperkin's other stuff. It also got announced at last year's CES, and it was at this year's CES too, with no release date planned, and it's also $100. I also have this guy that I have yet to try out. This is the Clockwork Pi Game Shell. This can play way more than just Game Boy Color and NES games, but you have to put it together yourself, and it's currently $160, and it's gonna retail for $200. So for the price and ease of use, if it's Game Boy Color and NES games that you're after, this thing takes the cake for sure. You can't get much better than the BITTBOY. Can we just take a second to talk about how Super Mario Land is the most bootleg-ass Mario game that Nintendo actually made? It looks like a student made it on his TI-89 calculator. Oh, hey, look at that, it died, it finally died. So what is that, like 3 or 4 hours maybe, we could say? So what do you guys think about the BITTBOY? What do you think about portable emulators as a whole? And what do you think about the Game Boy library as a whole? Are those types of games something that you would want in a little tiny form factor like this? Think about it, you got stuff like Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal you can put on this thing. The probably best Game Boy Color game ever, Metal Gear Solid. That's not even a joke, that game's fucking amazing. And I think it's still one of the top 10 best rated games on GameRankings.com ever, if you sort by reviews of 10 or more, I think. There's also Mega Man Extreme 1 and 2, which is the Game Boy Color ports of Mega Man X1 and X2, which is interesting. I'm having a lot of fun with the Game Boy library, I have to say. Anyway, leave it in the comments below. Add me on Twitter, and any and all of this other social media garbage. We got new videos and live streams all the time. Our schedule is in a pinned tweet over on our Twitter, except this video is just out, no schedule. I'm abiding by no schedule with this video. We're having a lot of fun over on twitch.tv/Wulff, and it's getting better and better. I've been switching off between Pokemon Let's Go and Super Smash Brothers, and yesterday's Super Smash Brothers stream was insane.
This game, top tier, but they're not terrible,
baby. But also here on YouTube, we got Wulff Den Live, and we got gameplay streams on here too. We do a lot, we stream a lot. Don't forget about Wulff Den Apparel for that top quality snackage. And of course, the most important thing that you could do, the easiest thing, is just subscribe to this channel. That's it. And share this video with a friend who is into retro gaming, just like you and I. Thank you very much. Have a good week.